Where do you think this is going now?
Well, I think what would be good for the country if the Budget Committee reported out a bill by December the 13th that did three things. Fund some infrastructure. There's a lot of bipartisan support for infrastructure funding for our roads, our bridges, and our ports. And the President should give Democrats some political cover to reform entitlements, and Republicans need to be courageous enough to flatten out the tax code. And if we did those three things and replace sequestration, we could end this year on a very positive note.
Do you think there's any chance that something like that could happen?
With presidential leadership, well, I think it would take leadership. The public is ready for the Congress to behave better. This is a second chance. It would help us all. 60% of the people in the United States want to fire every one of us. I understand that. But if we could come together and pay for an infrastructure bill, Mark is working on an infrastructure system of funding. If the President would give cover to Democrats to enact CPI changes that he's already embraced, and people like me would agree to bring in revenue, not by raising taxes, by flattening out the tax code and bring in some repatriated corporate earnings at a lower rate, apply that money to the to infrastructure, we could replace sequestration in whole and in part, and would help us all. It'd help the country. So it's there to be had with some leadership.
Senator Graham, what do you think the impact of all this has been on the Republican Party, your party?
It's a wake-up call, where conservatism is an asset to the Republican Party. We're a right-of-center nation. We're not a right-ditch nation. I think we've learned that this was a political gift to the President by the Republican Party at the time he needed it the most. The tactic of defunding the government unless he repealed his signature issue was as poorly designed as Obamacare itself, almost. I can't imagine President Bush agreeing to repeal the Bush tax cuts if the Democrats had challenged him with the following proposition: we will fund all the government, Mr. President, if you, President Bush, would give up on your tax cuts. President Obama was never going to give up on his signature issue. But as a party, we got to do some soul searching, and I hope our House colleagues will follow Speaker Boehner. The only way the government can shut down is not what Senator Cruz says, but what the House does. So President Obama, work with John Boehner. Work with Senator Reid. Senator Reid, stop moving the goalpost on Speaker Boehner. To my House Republican colleagues, follow Speaker Boehner. He's a good man. If we'll do all this, we won't shut the government down.
Do you think Speaker John Boehner is going to survive all this?
I hope so. I hope people rally around John and learn from this tactical mistake that they made regarding defunding Obamacare. John is ready to do a big deal. They were $150 billion apart, he and President Obama. So as we go back into the budget negotiations, I hope that under Paul Ryan's leadership and with some presidential leadership, we can do what Mark just talked about: an infrastructure bill that would allow us to create jobs, entitlement reform and tax code reform. And John Boehner is a willing participant, so is Mitch McConnell. We've got a unique opportunity here after this debacle called the shutdown to re-energize the Congress and maybe get in better standing. But John Boehner, please follow John.
What about Senator Ted Cruz? I asked Senator McConnell 6 ways from Sunday about how he was going to handle that part of it from here on in, and he didn't really give me any specifics. Has Ted Cruz hurt your party?
Well, I think the tactical choice that he embraced hurt our party. Ted's a smart guy, but Ted Cruz can't shut the government down. What shuts the government down is when the House and the Senate can't agree on a funding number. And our president has been virtually AWOL. This idea, I won't negotiate. The President of the United States needs to get involved with Boehner and Senator Reid to try to bring us together. The political marketplace will determine Ted Cruz's future. We helped President Obama when he needed our help the most. After this debacle called the shutdown, our party's been hurt. Our brand name is at its lowest ever. Obamacare actually got a bump in polling, and we got in the way of a disastrous rollout. So from my point of view, this was a tactical choice that hurt us. But the good news for the Republican Party is the debacle is over if we don't do it again, and Obamacare is a continuing debacle. One quick story. A friend of mine owns 52 Wendy's. He's put pen to paper. He has 40% of his workforce insured today. Under Obamacare, if 20% choose insurance, his insurance costs will double. That story is repeating itself throughout the economy. Obamacare is a debacle that will go into 2014. The shutdown should be in our rearview mirror as Republicans. Don't do this again, Ted.